Digital Pilipinas, bringing together the world's industry leaders in a multi-month movement of innovation and nation building to solve the country's age-old problems with technology. Technology can be our nation's strength and advantage as we showcase Filipino tech expertise to make a lasting impact on the country, influence change, and foster inclusion through technology and innovation across local and global spheres. To do this, Digital Pilipinas champions a 12-point agenda that provides solutions while leveraging on ICT-driven opportunities. FinTech, GovTech, and RegTech. PropTech. Digital transformation. Overseas Filipino banking. Future of mobility. InsurTech. E-commerce. Cybersecurity. Internet of Energy. Future of education, digital cities, gaming. The 12-point agenda will be our guiding star as we trade with trust, encourage cross-border collaborations, e-commerce, open finance, and work hand-in-hand with national and global tech leaders. Digital Pilipinas is a legacy in the making. In 2019, Amor Maclang, FinTech Philippines Executive Director, and Geyser Maclang Marketing Communications Incorporated co-founder, led the Philippine delegation in the Singapore FinTech Festival. In 2020, the country joined the ranks of emerging leaders in the largest event for global tech innovators, the World FinTech Festival. Now, Ms. Maclang, the appointed convener of the World FinTech Festival Philippines, is taking it a step further by gathering the brightest minds to establish the roadmap of the country's technological future with Digital Pilipinas. In the coming months, we will create the Digital Pilipinas Blueprint. It is a whole-of-nation, whole-of-society, whole-of-business approach with national leaders, foreign partners, and the private sector. Filipinos are at the heart of the ASEAN digital revolution, with Asia as the sandbox of innovations. With Digital Pilipinas, our nation will collectively break barriers, tech up industries, and go beyond what seemed to be impossible before. Watch out for our different events and programs in the following months featuring Business Without Borders, Real Estate and PropTech, EduTech, InsurTech and HealthTech, Environment and Sustainability, Diversity and Inclusion, Esports and Gaming, Cyber Defense and Cybersecurity. Get ready to join our biggest initiatives during the Global Impact FinTech ASEAN Conference, the Risky Business Series, the World FinTech Festival Reduxes, the Singapore FinTech Festival, the Next Generation Leaders Conference, culminating in the launch of the World FinTech Festival Philippines in November. Join the movement and be part of the country's digital revolution. Contact us by email and through our Facebook pages to learn more and be part of the Whole of Nation, Whole of Society platform for global and local prosperity. Digital Pilipinas is supported by the following partners and prime movers in innovation and nation building from the government and private sectors. Join the movement today. Mabuhay tayong lahat. Mabuhay ang Digital Pilipinas.
Welcome, future FinTech professionals, tech entrepreneurs, and digital enthusiasts to the World FinTech Festival, the global edition of the Singapore FinTech Festival in partnership with Digital Pilipinas Movement. I am your host, Seda from Geyser Maclang Communications Incorporated, and today I'll be guiding you through a series of exciting panel discussions that delve into fintech, e-commerce, health and insurance, cybersecurity, and more. This is the Web 3.0 revolution. This is the second time the Philippines is joining the World FinTech Festival. Last year, the World FinTech Festival Philippines aimed to galvanize the nation's industries to accelerate the adoption of fintech, be open to innovation, and invest in their workforce's digital upskilling. This year, our focus is on the next steps that come from championing collaboration within the private sector and beyond. We're looking at actionable roadmaps and concrete solutions. This year, our panelists are walking the walk. Before we dive into today's lineup of thrilling discussions, let's hear from Amor Maclang, convener of the Digital Pilipinas Movement and co-founder of Geyser Maclang Communications Incorporated.
Mabuhay and welcome to a Digital Pilipinas. Recently, the embassy of a certain superpower contacted us to discuss participation in our Digital Pilipinas movement. We were already partnered with the Singapore FinTech Festival and the Monetary Authority of Singapore, and it's really starting to gain a lot of attention, not just for the Philippines, but for Asia in general. This particular superpower was confident that we would immediately follow their lead and give their company stop billing. So politely, just like a sweet Asian would, we had to set them straight. Look, your country has 10 digital banking licenses. The entirety of Europe has 16. Asia, on the other hand, has 40, and 6 of which are Filipino. We are, of course, curious if you have anything new to contribute to the discussion. But Asia and the Philippines really don't need anything much from you at this point. On the other hand, what we'd like to do is maybe work with you closely, support you free of charge, and we are always happy to lend a hand. I don't think many Filipino industries speak to them that way. You know what? As a Filipino and as an Asian, it felt pretty good. Welcome to the ASEAN FinTech era. But this is already 3 years into the journey. Just a handful of years started by a few coders, entrepreneurs, and forward thinkers. When it comes to emerging fields like FinTech, which require widespread adoption, deep integration into various verticals, and fundamental changes to the way we do business, how is real progress made? Does it take brilliant innovators? Does it take ambitious companies from multiple industries? How about great academics and educators? Or charismatic technology community leaders? Or even progressive government agencies? I'm sure you'd all agree they all contribute to progress, but never individually. When progress is driven by one or two groups, the results can be incremental or lopsided or even outcomes with societal consequences. Sweeping progress only really works when everyone comes together under a common interest, and most of the time this happens under conditions of existential threat. For example, the Cold War birthed space travel and the internet. Climate change pushes the advancement of renewable energy to become less expensive than fossil fuels. COVID cut vaccine development time in half, and I'm sure we will see many biotech leaps and other advancements stemming from the pandemic. But how do you bring diverse groups together without a gun to our collective head? How do you string together a common cause? Digital Pilipinas is a technology-based, multi-industry, whole of business and whole of government movement we have been working on for close to 3 years now. Movements are a great way to thread common causes from diverse interests. As you can see, this ecosystem is cross-border, international, and involves both the governments of the Philippines and Singapore. Fascinating working with the Monetary Authority of Singapore, as many of their divisions operate more like a startup than a government. And I say that with the greatest respect. They are blazingly fast. I have to keep up. We have to keep up. Our primary focus is Web 3.0. And to kind of oversimplify things a bit, Web 1.0, the internet of porn. Web 2.0, the internet of social media. And now Web 3.0, the internet of exchange. Show us the money. I consider Web 3.0 a horizontal that will cut across every industry sooner or later. So we are in a constant state of outreach to help our economy tech up and not get left behind. To accomplish this, the Digital Pilipinas movement operates in 7 pillars. The first would be platforms for thought leadership, where top innovators, decision makers discuss the directions of Web 3.0, where it would take us, and how it would affect our industry. This system is circular and gives feedback about the type of leadership society needs to make everything work. The second is upskilling, reskilling the academe, and certification, where lectures, webinars, and coursework are made available with a testing and incremental certification system placed on the blockchain. This allows for digital identity portability, for industry-driven education that is affordable and accessible, with certification that is specific and cannot be faked. It's not just private individuals who are learning. New innovations, which could potentially confound existing regulations, are placed into a test and learn experimental sandbox where government regulators can work with innovators in a controlled environment to better understand and regulate new technology. This leads to far better outcomes than simply knee-jerk banning what we don't understand, which is usually the approach of most traditional governments. The third is a continuous and extensive and intensive outreach to the micro and small, medium-sized businesses, which are the micro capillaries of our economic circulatory system. The ultimate objective is to help them with a digital infrastructure so they may extend their reach beyond geographical limitations and into the global marketplace, aka a business truly without borders. The fourth is legislative and policy advocacy, where we help the government find the right industry experts for their technical working groups in aid of legislation regarding technology and innovation. This process, together with the sandboxes, substantially reduces the investment of risks associated with government adversity to innovation. The fifth is our advocacy towards an API economy. For those of you unfamiliar with the term, APIs are the software that let one organizational system interact with another. I call it the language of love in the Web 3.0 world, the only way we can truly communicate articulately in a digital Pilipinas and in a digital world. But it faces substantial hurdles and uncertainties among the leading institutions of the country. And we will utilize a system known as hackaliseums to find innovative solutions by bringing together innovators from many places from all over the world to overcome some of our toughest obstacles. The sixth is our advocacy to bring together multiple industries to support each other in this Web 3.0 world. Apart from fintech, we also extended to local e-commerce empowerment, insurtech and health tech, which are both desperately needed in the aftermath of the pandemic, regtech and cybersecurity, as our country was recently placed in the FATF gray list, prop tech with the real estate industry desperately needing to be teched up. The seventh is big and is very specific and personal to the Philippines. Elections. I'll admit it's a mountain. We need to ensure that we tech up this particular 2022 halalan. To do so, we're proposing an ethical hacking program to help find and eliminate possible vulnerabilities in the system. Fortunately, the largest group of white hat hackers in the country is part of our movement, together with some of the biggest government and also corporations in the Philippines. A first, they say, in coming together for cybersecurity for protecting Pinas. We are also calling to shape the discourse of our upcoming elections by getting the public to insist on leaders who have an innovation and a technology quotient. We can't just elect people who sprout the same old platitudes. It is time the Philippines elects those who will pole vault us to the future and not just leave us mired in the issues of the past. This is the Digital Pilipinas movement. This is a whole of nation, whole of society approach. This is how progress we hope gets done. The pandemic certainly sped things up, but Digital Pilipinas will help everyone who wants to tech up the country in good times and bad. Join us, won't you? Thank you at mabuhay po to all of you who believe that a Digital Pilipinas can happen in our lifetime.
Thank you very much for that incredible message, Ms. Amor Maclang. The Digital Pilipinas movement and the World FinTech Festival is all about encouraging collaboration. particularly between the private and public sectors. Joining us today is Carlos Dominguez, the Secretary of Finance at the Philippine Department of Finance, to give us his welcoming address.
Mr. Swapnendu Mohanty, Chief FinTech Officer of the Monetary Authority of Singapore, distinguished guests, good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to share the Philippines' comprehensive digitalization efforts. The entire Philippine government, our banking system, and our private enterprises are all involved in our country's shift to digital technologies. The pandemic hastened our digital transformation. As we construct the post-pandemic economy, it has become clear that we either digitalize or we lose out. The shift to digital technologies is most pronounced in the world of finance. The Philippine government put in place a liberal regulatory regime for fintechs to flourish in the country. We understand the companies involved in fintech are Quicksilver enterprises. They need to be at the cutting edge of technological change. We will not entangle them with needless red tape. Our own revenue agencies are surfing the digital tide. We have set up a number of e-payment and e-filing channels to improve tax collection and administration, curb corruption, and strengthen the business climate in the country. Last year, 90% of tax revenues were filed electronically. This year, nearly 100% of tax returns were filed online. This is a major breakthrough given the fact that only 10% of the country's taxpayers made use of digital tools to file their income taxes before President Rodrigo Duterte took office in 2016. As a result, despite the pandemic, we were able to deliver revenues above the target. Aside from the private sector, our development partners have been instrumental in helping realize the full digitalization of our tax system. For instance, the United States Trade and Development Agency is assisting us institute digital reforms in the Bureau of Internal Revenue. South Korea has also been supporting the Bureau in developing an electronic invoicing system. In addition, we are consulting with the officials of the Russian Federal Tax Service to possibly replicate Russia's very efficient value-added tax tracking and collection system. These will help set the stage for a world-class tax administration in the Philippines. The Bureau of Customs, for its part, launched the Philippines Customs Modernization Project supported by the World Bank. This is a major step towards aligning our processes and standards with the best customs services in the world. This is on top of the digital reforms being implemented by the agency, which include its customer care portal system and customs service centers nationwide. Meanwhile, the Department of Finance continues to spearhead the onboarding of regulatory agencies on our TradeNet electronic platform. This automates the licensing, permit issuance, clearance, and certification requirements of importers and exporters. Our Bureau of the Treasury, for its part, has floated a series of government securities, including our first ever retail dollar bonds. These were sold to individual investors through mobile applications. The bonds were consistently oversubscribed, enabling us to domestically source more than 2/3 of government borrowing. This, in turn, enabled us to follow the path of prudence in our debt management strategy. Last year, the Overseas Filipino Bank officially became the first digital-only bank in the Philippines. This enabled us to extend banking services to millions of overseas Filipino workers. It likewise enables them to become investors in the domestic capital market through our government bond offerings. Moreover, the Securities and Exchange Commission has fully harnessed the powers of new digital technologies to improve its monitoring of the capital markets, build the trust of investors, and protect the investing public, as well as support the emergence of a vibrant post-pandemic economy. Last April, the Philippines inaugurated its first ever electronic securities issue portal that makes possible online registration and processing of documents in the primary market. This widened the opportunity for our capital market to be more inclusive. As we expand digital channels for financial transactions, the government financial institution and other agencies under the Department of Finance are developing a cost-effective strategy to shield our financial systems from potential cybersecurity threats. This will safeguard all investors from fraud and protect privacy to the fullest. On the part of the central bank, it is spearheading reforms to provide a regulatory environment that promotes an efficient, inclusive, safe, and secure digital payments ecosystem. The strategy towards achieving the said objective is outlined in its Digital Transformation Roadmap 2020 to 2023. As transactions shift online, the Department of Finance is implementing a program to tax digital transactions more efficiently. The regulatory mechanisms should make certain that the transition to the digital economy will expand opportunities for legitimate enterprises. Our regulations should also protect the welfare of consumers. The Securities and Exchange Commission and the Bureau of Internal Revenue are also working together to ensure that financial technology companies in the country are properly regulated and taxed while encouraging their growth and continued innovation. In our digital efforts, we always encourage close collaboration with the private sector. We believe that the private sector's expertise and initiative to adopt digital innovations will help us bridge the digital divide and achieve President Duterte's goal of financial inclusion for all Filipinos. Clearly, the Philippines is riding the digital wave, transforming our processes according to what fintech makes possible, and participating in the new global economy as the pandemic begins to recede. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Dominguez, for that inspiring address. That was a great way to get our audience ready for the jam-packed day ahead. Let's get the show on the road and jump right into our first panel, The Future of Finance is Asian and Digital. Allow me to welcome to the screen the moderator for this panel, Jove Tapiador, co-founder and trustee of the FinTech Philippines Association.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Jove Tapiador, and I'll be your moderator for today. First panel, first day of this festival. Wow. I serve as a co-founder and trustee of the FinTech Philippines Association, the largest trade industry association for fintechs in the Philippines, and one of the most inclusive. So our panel is quite aptly named The Future of Finance is Asian and Digital. I am honored to be joined by today's panelists who are movers and shakers in the digital banking and fintech industries. So, first up, Harvey De Vera, CEO and co-founder of Union Digital Bank.
Good day, everyone. Good day, everyone. I'm Harvey De Vera, co-founder and CEO of Union Digital. Union Digital is a digital bank of Union Bank of the Philippines. It was granted a digital bank license in July this year and will launch in 2022. At Union Bank, we have long spoken about our aspirations to become a technology company, but also a bank. With Union Digital, this is now a reality. Born natively digital, branchless, paperless, and with no manual processes or legacy infrastructure, Union Digital will have the speed and agility of a fintech with the governance and risk controls of a bank. Union Digital will continue to work in collaboration with our regulators, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, as we have very well in the past, to help tech up the Philippines by leveraging on new technologies while harnessing the governance and risk expertise of a digitally transformed universal bank. Essentially, Union Digital is going to catapult Union Bank's digital transformation to its highest exponential degree. In this journey, and in the past as well, we've seen three key disruptive trends. That's fintech, blockchain, and open finance. Next slide, please. For fintech, we've always had a fintech first mindset. We are thought leaders in this space and have engaged our regulators here, namely the Bangko Sentral, and overseas in partners such as the Monetary Authority of Singapore, on key matters to support the growth in the industry and drive inclusive prosperity. Next slide, please. We deeply engage fintechs by collaborating and co-creating with them, banking, enabling, synergizing, and eventually investing in them as well. As a result, Union Bank is the fintech bank of choice in the Philippines and successfully built the fastest growing fintech in Southeast Asia, UBX, which invests in fintechs and builds as well. UBX was born from an initiative led by the Fintech Group, which I headed in Union Bank, and I now currently serve as a board director of UBX, as well as on the investment committee. Next slide, please. Meanwhile, in blockchain, we have been natives in this space since 2014. We unveiled the first virtual currency ATM in the country and created the first nationwide blockchain network connecting rural banks all over the country in a platform we call I2I. Another global game changer is the Union Bank PHX stablecoin, approved by the regulator, pegged to the local currency, and currently being used today in the I2I network. We also help Filipinos abroad by connecting this stablecoin in a pilot with OCBC in Singapore in the FinTech Festival of 2019, where we launched and piloted a first bank-to-bank cross-border remittance on blockchain. We also help our fellow Filipinos abroad through blockchain-enabled Bonds PH with the Bureau of Treasury. All these global award-winning and game-changing innovations have been approved by our very own forward-thinking Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. The use cases of blockchain in finance are proven, and it's definitely here to stay. We already see a strong uptake in various cryptocurrencies, play-to-earn communities, and various use cases really spreading through the globe. We at Union Digital aim to enable this responsibly with the highest degree of trust, reliability, and governance in collaboration with our regulators. Next slide, please. On open finance, finally, we have championed open APIs and open finance from the beginning. From Union Bank's API architecture to our globally award-winning API marketplace, the Netflix of APIs, if you will, which houses 500 endpoints, including open APIs of the bank and also that of our partner fintechs. Next slide, please. At the regional level, we have participated in the technical working group of the IFC, World Bank, and Monetary Authority of Singapore's ASEAN Financial Innovation Network, or AFIN, which currently runs the Regional API Exchange, or APIX. We are strengthening the partnership with AFIX through Union Digital and excited for more to come as open finance is truly revolutionary. Union Digital, as a fintech and also a bank, will provide our customers with the best of both worlds that these have to offer. The collaboration we have with our partners across the globe, APIX, the MAS, fintechs, will help us bring this to life in order to tech up the Philippines. Thank you.
Thank you, RV. Up next, Ms. Leila Martin, President and CEO of Overseas Filipino Bank, or OF Bank.
Hi, everyone. Pleasant day to fellow speakers, participants, and digital partners from across the globe. Pleasant greetings to one and all from Manila. We hope that you and your family are well and safe, and that your country and economies are on its way to a swift recovery. Thank you for inviting the Overseas Filipino Bank to be part of this prestigious conference. We welcome this opportunity to contribute to the exchange of ideas and possible solutions to provide the unbanked population access to financial services as we continue to advance greater financial inclusion. Let me step back a bit at this moment and go back to how OF Bank came to be. Early on, with the strong support of the Department of Finance and our parent bank, the Land Bank of the Philippines, with our sights on digitalization, serious considerations were made on major concerns like changes in processes and thinking, tapping into the outsourcing paradigm for both technology and business process, development of customer-centric products and services to engage and connect the target market into the digital space, and not the least, the organizational philosophies that has to be embedded in the bank's internal culture. And with a clear direction, we then proceeded to create, launch, and operationalize the Overseas Filipino Bank as the first licensed digital bank in the country. And as the official digital bank of the Philippine government, OF Bank definitely supports our central bank in implementing the open finance framework in the country, which forms part of our 3-year digital payments transformation roadmap. Towards this end, OF Bank remains focused on building a stronger digital infrastructure, mindful of the risks and compliant to regulations and security protocols, as we continue to address and deliver the banking needs of Filipinos overseas, as well as their families back home. Stronger collaborations will be pursued within a digital framework where Filipinos have the power to securely share financial data while accessing the products and services that are tailored to their needs. Thank you, Job.
Thank you, Leila. And broadcasting from Singapore, we have Manish Bai, CEO of Uno Bank. Manish?
Thank you, Joe. Greetings to everyone. It's a pleasure to be part of this forum and pleasure to be part of a panel with other co-digital bankers from Philippines. Let me take this opportunity to talk a bit on the theme for what we are out here, and also an opportunity to kind of introduce. Next slide, please. So let's talk a bit about the digital banking intensity change, which we have seen happening today in ASEAN, in Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia and in Philippines. So if you go back 5 to 7 years back, the digital banking revolution, kind of the first crops were laid in the West, in Europe and UK. Then 3 to 5 years back, we saw a lot of action happening in the East, particularly so around China, Korea, Australia. But last 18 months, as we all know, we have seen unrelenting action and activity around Southeast Asia, specifically in 2021. Where we saw Singapore leading the way with 4 digital banking licenses, Philippines really being the tiger out there with 6 digital banking licenses, and many others like Malaysia kind of freezing and kind of coming out with a program around digital banking. Not only that, we saw within the existing framework, the action taking place in Vietnam and Indonesia. Next slide, please. The other trend which we are seeing is complete convergence of financial services around digital bank. So what I mean by that, look in Southeast Asia, around 7 to 10 years back, again, we saw the first seeds of digitalization come with e-commerce companies, the ride-hailing companies. 3 to 5 years back, the focus shifted more towards wallets, digital lenders, payment companies. And the last 12 to 18 months, again, is convergence around digital banking. So these are very, very important trends. And what is leading to these trends? Why we saw this intensity suddenly in the last 18 months? Next slides, please. So what has really made this is a strong endorsement around financial inclusion by the entire ecosystem, starting right from the regulators, but with the incumbents, the fintechs, everyone jumping into the fray. Kind of, it's become a kind of common goal of financial inclusion and making sure that the lowest common denominator, each and everyone has access to a bank account or credit or any form of financial services. And in the Philippines context, this has been seen evolving in two big threads. One is around open finance, where we saw the regulators leading the way and making sure the right frameworks are being processed, which will ensure and which have already ensured arrangements between incumbents and fintechs, which has ensured banking as a platform emerging, banking as a service emerging, and all these already in play in Philippines. And second, around digital banking, where it led the way by issuing 6 digital banking licenses, and UNO being one among them. Next slide, please. So this is a perfect segue for me to kind of introduce UNO. So what is UNO? What is UNO Bank? It is a digital first, full spectrum digital bank. It's one trusted interface to meet all your life's financial needs. What I mean by that is one place where you can borrow, save, transact, protect, invest. And our strategy is credit-led. We believe financial inclusion is not only about opening a bank account. That is important, but it's also about bringing everyone who's borrowing into an organized fold. And we all know that in Philippines today, borrowing from the unorganized sector is very, very, very high. So with the credit-led strategy and our moat being around personalization and strong tech stack, our end game intends to be that we want to bring banking just like you deliver Netflix or Facebook, that level of customization where the end customer is able to see and transact and take things as per their preferences and needs. Next slide, please. So in summary, what's the proposition of UNO? We are a challenger digital bank. We are both a challenger and a collaborator. We're working with a mission of elevating everyone to make banking simple, better, accessible. Our focus is around the mass segments, which are greatest number of unbanked and underbanked is around the mass segment. We will be backed by strong partnerships and latest technology. And in a way, we are a classic fintech led by professional executives. The founding team and the lead team are people with background in digital banking and technology. And we are first fintech to get an outright digital banking license. So we are gearing up for a commercial launch in H1 of 2022. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Manish. And joining us is Jojo Malolos, President and CEO of GoTime.
Yes, good afternoon and a great day to everybody. It's nice to be back on this platform, the Singapore FinTech Festival platform, which we now aptly call the World Finance FinTech Festival platform. And I'm very, very glad to be back in terms of sharing our experiences. I am the president and CEO of GoTime, a most recently licensed digital bank in the Philippines, along with my co-speakers here and co-panelists here. And GoTime is actually a joint venture digital bank, challenger bank of the Gokongwei group of companies, which is one of the most progressive and influential successful conglomerates in the country, and Time Bank of South Africa, which is one of the upcoming and most successful digital banks out of Africa, having accumulated 4 million customers in less than 3 years, something that probably you would like to also emulate and also track in doing in the Philippines. On top of that, GoTime is actually a facilitator of a native, what we're calling a native migration of the Gokongwei Group's ecosystems behavior towards having better choices to make decisions towards improving their lives. And this time, we use as a hook digital banking. So we bring to the market a great experience of how people make choices and make decisions. And we will be putting in their hands tools like digital banking, fintech tools that will allow them to make better decisions in terms of paying for putting their money in the bank or lending money, borrowing money, at the same time using financial services to improve their lives, which is basically the core of the objective of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. I'm also very, very fortunate to be the last speaker in this panel because I don't need to update everybody about digital banking and open finance, because I think everybody's in the same boat in terms of presenting each of our cases in terms of addressing the requirements of BSP, which is to have 70% of adults in the Philippines to have transaction accounts. And at the same time, by 2023, having 50% of all retail transactions to be digital. I think that's a common objective. And as a digital bank, and along with our collaborators in this field, we are endeavoring to use innovation to the hilt so that we're able to use this and then allow our consumers to responsibly use these tools, whether it's open finance, whether it's fintech, and to manage the risk associated with them making decisions for their own protection as consumers. Thank you.
Thank you, Jojo. You may be the last, but definitely you're not off the hook. Everybody here will have to answer some tough questions. And this is really, ladies and gentlemen, this is a powerhouse panel, and also close-knit community of practitioners in digital banking and open finance. And I'm honored to be in this discussion with this group. First off, I'll have to ask RV, what are the current challenges you foresee from the industry in terms of adoption of an open banking system?
Thanks, Joe. I think the biggest challenge is adoption itself. I think we can zero in on that because we need to have more people understand the power of open finance, what it does, but more people also, experimenting, doing, utilizing the use cases of open finance, whether it be just sharing data or sharing transactional information or being able to control information across platforms. I think we need to have more use cases in open finance at two levels. I would say at the corporate level. So we need to see more corporates use it. When you see large corporates use it, they really move the needle. But more importantly, we're going to need to see government also be a heavy adopter and user, because once government starts to apply it, they're such a strong influencer in their value chain that they can drive many in the ecosystem to use it. So I'm simplifying it, but I would say adoption at the highest level is a big challenge, because that will really trickle down to the users. Most of the users like you and me will, open finance will be an embedded and invisible feature that we won't even know about, right? But all of a sudden we can control our finances or our information across platforms, and really giving control back to the individual, who is the one who owns the account, owns the funds, owns his identity, and wants to direct the usage of that in other platforms. So to unlock that, I think we're going to have more usage, and that really has to come from, I believe, government and the corporate sector, and that will also drive adoption at the retail level.
Got it. Government and private sector. Now, Jojo, I know you have international experience also in rolling out more inclusive digital products and services. What is your take on an open banking ecosystem in the Philippines and in the region?
Before that, I wanted to zero in on RV's description of adoption, and while recognizing the fact that adoption is clearly the biggest challenge, I think if we go steps deeper, we have to appreciate how we manage and basically turn around the way that we have handled adoption in the past, right? So, you have when we introduce e-wallets, when we introduce new fintech innovation, we always talk about, how people will adapt to that, and then how comfortable will they be in adapting to that. And I guess, linking it to my experience in various ecosystems in international communities, in Latin America, in Africa, and most recently in Cambodia, I think the most important aspect is that how do we laymanize, how do we laymanize this from the perspective of the consumers who would like to address it. While we try to educate them in a manner that they will understand, I think the biggest part of it is getting them to experience it and actually, commit some mistakes, and actually for them to understand how these are going to be resolved. But what we are seeing really, Jove, it's the velocity by which innovations or technology or digitalization is being introduced is actually contributing to more challenges on the adoption, right? So you introduce embedded finance, you introduce all of these new fintechs, e-commerce technology. A lot of companies are doing all of this. Somehow it confuses the consumer, right? So what do I do? If we talk about open finance, we talk about data sharing. We talk about, will I be willing to share my data to third parties so that, I can continue to get more products and services that will be attuned to what I need. So when you take a look at that, the challenge really for us, particularly in the ecosystem that we have in the Philippines, is that we have 70% of the population who are unbanked and who would probably need more attention in terms of education, in terms of getting them to adopt to it. And then there are problems that are basically intrinsic to the unbanked that may not be visible to the bank, right? For example, most of the unbanked, to be part of the digital banking innovation, should have a SIM card, right? Should have a SIM card in their phones, or maybe, some of them are still using feature phones. Or maybe in some areas, there's a network problem. Or maybe you have, fintech solutions that have, untoward bias towards, selecting who to underwrite and who not to underwrite. There are a lot of things that are also a result of new innovations being brought in that allows us to maybe be more perspective about how and what we need to do for them to understand what this is all about. So with this ecosystem, however, with the efforts of Union Digital, Union Bank, and all of the regulators, I think from the bank perspective, we have elevated our appreciation of open finance. Now, 70% of the ecosystem needs further information around that, further experience on understanding what the risks are all about, understanding the consumer protection frameworks of regulators that will allow us to be able to do this. So I think we have what it takes to make this successful. And you have 6 companies, 6 digital banks now that are able to basically bring to the fore, an instance of a service that's easily understood, and that they're willing to take it and trust and give it trust and confidence for it to happen.
I like the term laymanize. I mean, really bring it down to the mass market, to the ordinary folks who really need this service. So I think that the next thread of my question will be directed to Leila and then Manish. Which particular segments of the underbanked, which Georgia has already identified, do you see yourself focusing more on, and why?
Joe, let me chip in also on the question addressed to RV earlier. Let me consumerize my take on your first question. With open banking, well, banks know that we can provide clients access to personalized, frictionless digital banking experience. However, to be able to do this, our clients must be willing to share their transactional data, which is perceived as one of the most privacy-sensitive forms of information. Also, as in banking, we must be able to win our clients' trust, which is primordial concern right now, and communicate. And I do agree at this point very clearly to what RB and Jojo was saying earlier. We must convey in a very clear language that we are putting forward our consumers' demands and needs first, with the assurance of safe handling of their transactional data. Once our client understand that by sharing data, they get access to a lot of products they want, and that those products will be suitable with an easy application process and an assurance of a fair and fully informed decision at their end, then open banking can definitely progress more. So having said that, let me respond to your question directed to me. What segment of the underbanked do we focus on and why? OF Bank was envisioned to be a policy bank for our overseas Filipinos and their beneficiaries. So among our primary customers are the overseas Filipino workers living and working in another country to provide food on the table. A top priority is, of course, sending money to their loved ones and be able to save as well for their future needs. These things can be done best with a bank account. Unfortunately, we have a lot of overseas Filipinos that left the country without having opened their own account. And thus, sending money is gonna be a very big problem for them. And of course, they would have to go to remittance options that would be, well, more pricey than those being remitted to a bank-to-bank account. And thus, to address this need, we developed and implemented secure, convenient, and reliable bank products and services, such as the online account opening facility available anytime, anywhere, with no opening deposit nor any maintaining balance requirements. And opening process is completed in 5 minutes or less. There's a bills payment facility with more than 700 merchants to pay online directly to. Fund transfer facility running on the National Retail Payment System highway. And there's the investment facilities as well, with as low as 500 pesos investment product. Let me underscore at this point the importance of having an accessible platform that allows the investing public to easily participate in the country's bond offerings, as the data we have access to will be useful in developing sound investment instruments that definitely respond to the financial goals of overseas Filipinos. That which is to save with their money kept intact and secured. So basically, Job, that's our take on both questions raised earlier. Thank you.
Thank you, Leila. And Manish, coming into the country, what market segments are you particularly focusing on and why?
Thanks, Joe. Just because I'm going last, I wouldn't miss the opportunity to comment on the earlier point, because it's a very, very important point. And let me just bring a slightly different perspective to it. So I absolutely agree 100%, more than 100% with all the points which are mentioned right from the adoption. But one of the practical challenges also which we see is around operationalizing the whole thing, because after huge conviction, there have been traditional organizations or even government organizations which has convinced around the benefit of open finance. But because the technology is so arcane, so old, and there has been a struggle in how to make this effective. So one of the suggestions out there is an equal kind of an investment also from the fintechs who are kind of make this possible, or kind of a pool of just like organizations have a corporate social responsibility pool, a very kind of a dedicated pool which is focused towards this open finance objective, will have the explosion of this activity. Similarly, on the same thread, a bit of regulations which are already there, but regulations which focus on standardization of APIs, like which we saw that happen in UK 6 or 7 years back, and which kind of gave a complete catalyst approach to open finance, which the regulators are already doing, but standardization of laws, because the big issue out here, the bedrock is trust, because because even customers think, is my data secure? Is it private? So anything which helps everyone to feel secure that there's a guiding law, there is a huge amount of security around what we share, will kind of help the industry grow forward. Moving to the second question, see, if you look at out here, we talk a lot about the percentage of underbanked. It's a huge number, but the issue doesn't end there. While in Asia, while in our Southeast Asia, we have 50% underbanked. We also, for unbanked, we have around 30% or so underbanked. Similarly, in Philippines, when you look at the underbanked, that is another 15 to 20%, which you add to this 70%, which is unbanked. So it's a kind of a massive population which we are talking about as an opportunity. So being a credit-led bank, we are focusing towards around the 45-50 million of the adult individuals who are in the workforce today as a first phase of target. Being a credit-led organization, we want to touch people who have some income as a starting point. And that's our focus. Again, I have always said repeatedly that financial inclusion is not only about a bank account. It is also about kind of making sure that everyone comes under the organized fold when it comes to borrowings. And that's our target market, around the mass, around the 50 million or so people who have some income, but most of them are today kind of borrowing outside the organized sector. And then we go and expand our spectrum over the coming 24, 36 months.
Thank you, Manish. So what we have here is a situation where there's a policy direction on targeting the underbanked and unbanked, but also there are laws that secure data privacy, consumer protection. And I'd like to kick this off with RV, and then the rest of the panelists can chime in. Much of the apathy in the industry is partly due to the fear of sharing their data, and also the concerns of consumers, as well as to their lack of knowledge of how it works and security and privacy threats that have been raised. What steps are you undertaking to mitigate this risk? RV?
Thank you, Joe. I think as a bank, we've always been as bankers, we're always very particular about governance and trust. And that was mentioned by my previous panelists earlier. We obviously, I think as digital bankers, will now be held to a higher standard in terms of managing data, securing it. I think the guidelines to the digital bank have been very clear that they're going to hold us responsible to a higher standard, I believe, being digital banks. With that note, I think I'd like to spin off to a discussion we had previously, which is, sure, securing our own data, but remember, in an open finance world, we're sharing this data, no? So in sharing this data, the first level we think about in our context, I think, is our fellow digital banks, right? So when we got together ourselves as digital bankers, we said, look, when we're sharing data amongst ourselves, we have to make sure that we can manage this efficiently. You know, when we're doing transfers, we can always also manage the information efficiently. So amongst ourselves, in that digital bank ecosystem, if you will, we can manage that, no? And then it spans out to the other ecosystems we work with, other partners we work with. So the partners whom we start to include into our ecosystem will obviously have to pass our own accreditation, and all of that, as you see in the guidelines, is the responsibility of the digital bank to make sure that your partners are also adhering to a certain level of data protection standards and the like. So I guess my answer to that is really protecting the ecosystem we operate in, not just starting with your own house, but also with your immediate partners. And the more you can establish that collaborative and secure level of interaction, the better you can secure the data of your customers.
How about for OF Bank, Leila? Given that you have a market that's outside the country, what are the steps that are being undertaken to mitigate this kind of security privacy risk?
Okay, let me put forward my thoughts on mitigating risk in terms of the open banking. Well, we have to put customers first and always bear in mind that the compelling reason why we go into open banking is to provide our customers with secure and convenient products and services that will make them trust us and thus win their loyalty. We have to communicate clearly how the product works, the security features to protect their accounts, and provide assurance of a safe handling of sensitive payment data. We do believe that all players in open banking must be accountable to the consumers, and risk management protocols must be established for incidences like misuse of customer data by third-party providers, lack of process execution controls, fraudulent access, lack of traceability of customer data use, and other potential risks out there. And definitely we have to contend with execution risks. When the platform we built and its collateral systems will not be able to perform as expected for customer interactions. We might be starting off with good collaborations, but in the end, it might not be the one that we should be providing to our target markets. Of course, the bank's platform API configuration must be able to keep up with redundancy features as well. Each and every one has those included in the bank's ecosystem. Overall, sound risk management practices is really an integral part of open banking. It must be adapted to help secure delivery of frictionless customer experiences, and definitely regulatory compliance will strengthen open banking, as compliance and supervisory oversight mandates are on consumer protection, data security, privacy, financial crime, financial disclosure, and of course, third-party technology standards. So overall, I think risk management, clear communication, clear language, with consumer taking their time as well to learn the security features of these products, and of course, betting on good fintech and third-party providers would be essentially collectively working for our open banking to progress more.
Thank you, Leila. So accountability to your customers, strong risk management systems, strengthened by technology, of course. I'd like those are key phrases that I'm taking away. But allow me to shift to a more strategic perspective, and hopefully Manish and followed by Jojo can give perspectives on these. What does an Asian and digital future of finance look like for you, given your regional perspectives as well?
If I may go first, I think this is a bit outside the panel discussion. When the slides I shared earlier, I talked about the intensity, which we saw how the shift has happened from the West to kind of Asia, and within Asia now in South and Southeast Asia. That is also kind of reflected in the number of new digital licenses and the fintechs which are coming up out here, which is just around, if you look at this region, we are talking about 40 or so licenses, digital licenses, which will be up very, very soon. Similar activity has also been seen on the wallet space. So from my perspective, when I look at it, I would say the future of finance around this region is very, very bright. And every regulator today is very focused on making sure that the regulations which support that, again, which I touched upon earlier, right, from digital banking to open financing, are put in play. And MAS from Singapore is really kind of leading the way onto this. And the coordination across the groups in Asia is working on very, very effectively. One thing which is linked, and it is also linked to the earlier question, because see, to this growth, what can be the impediment? Like the bedrock, again, I keep saying the bedrock of this movement is around trust. It's not only that the consumers are secure, they need to feel secure. It's also a perception thing. Only customer trust will energize this growth. And we all have a part to play into this. And my prior panelists, they touched upon education, and it's taken lightly, but it is important. And that's where we all have a role. The entire ecosystem, the media, the forums like this, because believe me, 50% of the consumers even have this perception that data is not secure. It's not possible to be secure. So the possibility is there, the laws are there, and that's where, again, someone had touched upon execution, that becomes important. So once this trust is well communicated and everyone follows that in the execution process, and it's easier said than done, because you have to make multiple choices. Like for all of us in digital banking here, we all will have to make a choice between user experience and kind of cybersecurity. We all get carried with our user experience. If you look at UNO, our own vision is speed and ease, but that does not mean that we deliver speed and ease with compromising on this front. So I think these are few of the parameters which is very important. And as long as everyone is conscious of this, which I believe everyone is, and regulators are really showing a shining light on that, this region is going to see immense activity over the next 24 months. And we are already seeing it in terms of the foreign players and all coming in markets like Indonesia and now Philippines, with a number of unicorns increasing in these markets as well.
Thanks, Manish. Jojo, what's your take?
Yes, I'd like the operative phrase that Manish used. Easier said than done, right? So we probably are a bedrock of easier said than done environment right from the start, particularly on finance. But I agree that the future is bright, and I think the complexity by which we have also gone through, not only to the velocity of new innovation on finance being introduced by thousands and thousands of fintechs coming up with their own new ways of making it easy to borrow money, making it easy to get the most out of the funds or the money that you put in a bank. The complexity, ironically, has also allowed us to work faster, right? So the complexity I'm talking about is not only on the velocity of new innovations, but climate change, sustainability programs, the new ways of working as a result of having to adjust to the impact of COVID, and as we transform ourselves and transcend ourselves to this new normal, I think we are better educated on what we have to use and be the basis by which we can use these tools that are being introduced to us. But I think in the future, the metric will be different. The metric will be different in measuring our level of success here. And it will be different in a way that it will go back to the basics, right? I read an article that says digital finance, if done properly, would actually contribute to 15% of the GDP of a particular economy. So maybe the new metric will be how successful are we in implementing this and bringing it to using this innovation to really achieve that objective of improving the lives of people. The metric will not be the number of unicorns that each economy comes up with. It will not be the more profitable banks or companies that or digital banks that are coming to bear in any economy. It's not going to be the inflow of more money, more funds from different investors. It's going to be how we have really leveled off poverty, how we have really make sure that we use this innovation to bring about new jobs, come up with new micro entrepreneurs who will be successful in not only introducing new innovations in the economies, but also improve their lives. I think this is the bedrock of easier said than done as a phrase, but we are all rooting to address this challenge, and we are all rooting to have an impact on the economy of each of the countries we are in. And for the Philippines particularly, it's not just targeting 70% and use all of these advantages, new innovation technologies to really get to the bottom of improving the GDP of the country, making it more resilient, literally across all of these challenges that are happening to the global economies like COVID and all of these catastrophes that continue to run havoc to the economies of countries like the Philippines.
Thank you, Jojo. 2/3 of the adult population of Southeast Asia is underbanked and unbanked. And yeah, really, technology will have that outsized impact in creating and empowering the financial lives of this underbanked population. Now, this is where I'd like to direct the question to Leila and then to RV, whose parent banks are traditional banks. Now, from an industry perspective, what is the role of traditional banks in the future of finance? How important are they as we move towards digitalization? Leila?
Well, I can probably speak for my parent bank at this point. Although it's a traditional bank, Land Bank has been the first to really go among the first of the banks to go online, starting with the internet banking, the iAccess and the WeAccess, and of course, the e-wallet, the smart e-wallet. Jojo Malolos, before we have the smart e-card. Remember that time which we launched in Hong Kong at that time. But well, having said that, I think Land Bank as well as OF Bank is on our way forward. In a banking industry that will be soon adopting the open finance framework. We are already partnering aggressively with public and private entities for a seamless integration of data as a means to achieve a holistic financial experience for our clients. We're side by side in pursuing digitalization of processes, products and services, and even the after sales activities that we do. This forms part of both banks' continuous digital transformation, which is the key to provide safe, fast, and convenient service to customers whose needs are definitely evolving with a growing shift and clamor for innovative solutions. But I guess at this point, the main consideration probably not only for traditional bank or for the digital banks, with my co-panelists now, is the achieving or the actually pursuing a good balance between the speed to market these innovative products and services and implementing a secure, safe, and convenient product which the client will really trust and experience. As RB mentioned earlier, adoption is gonna be the key. And of course, we can, so to speak, to be able to probably measure how successful these products and services are in the open banking ecosystem is for us to be able to get as much volume as possible. Probably, as mentioned earlier, 60% of the unbanked population now. So it might be a tall order, but with the collaborative and concerted efforts of us, 6 digital banks right now, it can probably happen in the next 2 years or so. OF Bank and Land Bank definitely remain at the forefront of catering to the banking needs of Filipinos, whether they are abroad or in the Philippine shores. We do implement secure and reliable banking products and services, and definitely we will rely on more fintech collaboration to be able to implement innovative products and solutions, and thus helping our customers achieve their financial goals in the process. Thank you, Joe, for the question.
Thank you. RV, what's your take?
Yeah, well, for us at Union, we saw a lot of opportunity in teching up the corporates, and we were we saw that that's how we the transformation. If you look at the InstaPay and PesoNet transactions, Union Bank is punching above its weight, consistently within the top three, despite our smaller base in the big banks. We've enabled a lot of the digital transactions, and we'll continue to do that. So I think the main bank, the traditional bank, if you will, has been very successful in helping adoption at the corporate level, at the SME level, at the retail level, and even at the government level. We've enabled a lot of government institutions. That has to continue, I think. No, that's definitely going to continue. But I think, to talk about back to the easier said than done, no matter what happens in the private sector or with the digital banks, I think what comes to mind whenever we talk about this easier said than done, let's look at the lessons learned from PesoNet and InstaPay. I don't think we want open finance to follow the same difficult route. In that case, you're going to have a 3 to 5 year adoption. You're going to have some banks dragging their feet, saying they're not ready for the APIs. Meanwhile, us digital banks are API ready. So that's going to be a bit of a disadvantage, which shouldn't be. I mean, we should also force the regular banks and regular institutions to be more API ready. So I think my note on that, Jove, is that we need a lot of enforcement. We need stronger regulation to make sure that we don't follow the adoption path that PesoNet and InstaPay took, and even the challenges now. Otherwise, open banking might be a 5-year adoption plan, right? Which will be sad because we won't get to utilize the benefits. So my caution there is to really watch out for those dragging their feet, I suppose. Because many of us, especially the 6 of us here, we're digital banks, we're ready. But it's not fair to put us in the same bucket as everyone else who's still trying to figure out their APIs and then talk about open finance in the context of everybody. That in a way is what Manish is referring to as easier said than done, because it's not apples to apples in that sense. So adoption in that sense will be very varied, right? So I think we have to level the playing field. And in that case, I think we as digital banks are the new standard in terms of open finance, and therefore we have to obviously carry that out amongst ourselves, but maybe use that as a benchmark for the rest, and then overlay that with some enforcement to make sure that we don't have institutions dragging their feet to draw out adoption.
Thanks, Arby.
Joe,
Speaking more as a challenger bank than a traditional banker. And yes, Ms. Leo.
Yeah, Joe, let me chime in on what Arby said about traditional banks. I completely agree with Arby. Traditional banks will probably remain as long as they do evolve as well, because there are new technologies out there, and definitely open banking is the thing to go to moving forward. But I guess the traditional banks, as the over-the-counter, they have the presence, which definitely we will still need for those consumers that would like to have the physical cash. It's the reason why the parent bank, or the Land Bank of the Philippines, now is into agent banking with more than 120 plus agent banking partners, precisely because in the rural areas where there are not many ATMs, there are no branches available. Of course, there are rural banks, and that's what we're going into, tapping them as agent banking partners. But definitely the traditional bank will is still be in the horizon, as they have the resources and the tools that will definitely provide that much assistance to us in digital banking for those services that you cannot do digitally. So
Thank you, Leila.
yeah.
Thank you. I'm actually curious as to what will be the response of our Challenger Bank colleagues. Let's start first with Jojo, then followed by Manish. Should traditional banks shift towards digital banking, or will we see new purely digital banks crop up to replace them?
I don't think that is the intention of BSP in terms of coming up with a new category. So we have also a traditional bank in GoTime, right? Yeah, we have Robinson's Bank, although it's a traditional bank that's probably in the cellar relative to the the terms of operations. We're not number 3, we're not number 5, we're not number 10. We're down to about number 18 or 20. But the whole idea of this is really, I think it's a process by which you call a main bank, as RV put it, a traditional bank, simply because it was designed to be a traditional bank. It was a category that was given by BSP, and you will operate in this context, right? You operate in the context of what products you can provide and all the stuff. Now, the categorization of a challenger bank or the digital bank, it's not an experiment, but it's an above the experiment, because as RV mentioned, what will happen with a banking with a challenger bank that is API ready, right? And what are the things that they can do faster and more fleet-footed than traditional banks? And probably they can coexist. We intend to coexist with Robinsons Bank, Go Time. And then we will maximize the effort by which not only to be able to achieve what we want to achieve moving forward, but probably also carry them with us in terms of improving the services that they are able to do. They're classified as commercial banks because they're limited to basically getting into the base of the pyramid, because it's going to be costly for them, right? It's going to be costly for them. They need to put up branches, etc., etc. But I think our ability to go to the base of the pyramid that bring their products and services, which are innovative, might be a good way to do it. So I think it will coexist. But to RV's point, however, there has to be an acceptance of the fact that different rules will apply to execution when the challenger banks get rubber meets the road, right? When rubber meets the road for digital bank, it's going to be an experience that's probably not seen by anybody else, particularly on a lot of basic things in open finance, which is data, right? There has to be a basic way by which we see the power of data unlocking the potential of an actual financial institution. And that's the key to open finance. The data begets data, right? The ability to get data, the ability to make people understand how this, sharing of the data will improve financial products that cater to their requirements. So it will coexist. Traditional banks will continue to have, a clear mandate, which is to still contribute to the, economy through the corporates, to the SMEs. But it will have to be a realization that there are things that they will have to follow instead of the digital banks following them, right? So it's, and I agree with RV. It cannot be an InstaPay or a PesoNet process, right? We don't have 5 years to make this successful. We have about, probably 2 to 3 years, and we have to be, going to the next level already.
Thanks, Jojo. Manish, your thoughts?
One of the most important constituents in this ecosystem, when we look at it, is the consumer himself or herself. And the consumer is going to dictate a lot about how the future of many of the organizations look at it. So take the example of pandemic. And that was a kind of a first scenario, and where a consumer looked at the ability to be able to do things from home or on the mobile phone. So forget traditional or digital or whatever it is. So banks had to adopt to kind of provide that. And those who were not able to adopt had to kind of lay off or had kind of suffered a huge loss in the business. So I think what's going to happen over the next 2 or 3 years, the conversation is not about whether it's digital or traditional. The models are undergoing a change. Digitals ask greenfield, they're starting from scratch. They adopt quickly to the new models. The traditional, what Leah mentioned, what RV touched upon, what the same point what Jojo mentioned, one thing is certain, it cannot be the way it is today. It will kind of go through a transition. The question is not about existence or not existence. Let's not forget that banking is 560-year-old kind of a profession. The first bank came up around in 1500. So it's not that traditional banks are going to disappear overnight, but the models are going to kind of absolutely have to change. And the point from the regulators, the RV made a very, very important point. Till the time that level playing field doesn't come through, or even more than level playing field, in the sense that facilitation doesn't happen for digital bank to kind of really be digital, be agile, the whole purpose might be lost, or it might be deferred, because the idea over here is not to look at things from a 3-year or 5-year perspective. The idea is to look at things from a 6 months perspective or 3 months perspective, but without kind of compromising on security, the aspect which we touched upon later. So that's my view on how the ecosystem will evolve.
Thanks, Manish. My thoughts are now going to the direction of technology in banking, the government stance on open finance, and also the ASEAN perspective. So this is open for everybody, but I'd like to hear first the thoughts of Ms. Leila Martin on how does increasing tech in banking and finance make it more accessible to the underbanked?
Well, definitely with a lot of digital products and services now, the underbanked can definitely open their account, do any transactions with a device really ever present in our hands, the mobile phones. And definitely it's more user friendly than the traditional way of doing it, going over the counter. And of course, precisely now that we're in pandemic, more and more people are really shifting to using digital banking products and services. But of course, we must see the open banking, the digital banking economy as a system whose primary components, players, technology, processes, and data are constantly evolving and inherently introducing risk. And risk begins the moment the data are shared by our consumer, be it underbanked or the bank right now. Well, we are all in this together in terms of managing and mitigating the risk. And having said that, I think at OF Bank, this is our primary concern, to really protect our consumer. Of course, the underbanked we need to handhold the underbanked in terms of appreciating more what digital banking can provide to them. But on the other side, we also really is very conscious of the risk that might happen or might be providing to the consumer by these products and services. So we are looking forward to our Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas in terms of further building the regulations that will encapsulate the digital banking ecosystem so that everyone, whether bank or underbanked or unbanked, will be properly protected.
Thanks, Leila. Jojo, what 2 or 3 things have you been doing to make banking and finance more accessible by technology?
Well, actually, I'm running 2 other companies in the group, right? So I'm running a data analytics ventures Inc., which basically houses data, consumer data that we have on loyal customers of our retail footprint, right? We have hundreds and hundreds of supermarkets, drugstores, and also sari-sari stores, and also hardwares. I'm also running a venture capital company wherein we are at the forefront or the front seat of looking at innovations and basically catering to the needs of the underbanked, or maybe those who are not accessible to technology or to funds even, and then realize these types of innovations. So a conglomeration of these initiatives allows us to see how innovation and technology have really gotten to the base of the pyramid. For example, we've invested in a company called Grocery, which basically has connected 40,000 sari-sari stores using technology, B2B technology. They're able to get them to be more efficient in buying their goods and selling it to the consumers. in a more efficient and more profitable manner. It reduces the cost of transportation, it reduces the cost of negotiations, and eventually it augments their businesses. We're also looking at companies that are basically, catering to micro SMEs, right? Micro SMEs that allows them to probably come up with new products and services like, your favorite lugao, your favorite adobo coming from, micro entrepreneurs who are not doing anything. And then all of this innovation technology are 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 going to be connected to financials, right? Payments, you get data on who amongst the sari-sari stores would be, ready for, a different type of loan. And then all of these are conglomerated in a way that we can say that there is a huge possibility that the underbanked can really be tapped with this innovation technology. But it's going to be a combination of technology from e-commerce, technology from supply chain, technology from digital banking, which I think is the core objective of digitalization in any emerging market.
Thank you, Jojo. Ladies and gentlemen, we are
Sorry,
pressed for time.
if I can just quickly add to Jojo's last point. I think Jojo is starting to speak about platforms, no, which is something that the Philippines is really moving to. You look now, there are so many platforms. Fintechs are providing platforms, conglomerates are providing platforms. I think the more platforms that emerge, the more open banking will be important. But I think that's the keynote that I want to end up with. We continue to tech up the Philippines with all these platforms that we're building for our customer set, for our value chain, and that really helps a lot. So a lot of these open banking initiatives are actually being used internally. I'm sure they're being used internally by the JG group. We're using it internally in the Boitis group. It's just about unlocking that really and democratizing that for more. But we see the benefits within our conglomerates of building these platforms and really enabling them through open finance. So I think I just like to end with that note. It's encouraging to see so many different platforms emerging in the Philippines across supply chains, SME, corporates, and that's just going to really drive more innovation and then more adoption also.
RV, you just answered the last question that I'm posing to the group now. How do you ensure that everyone can gain access to digital banking? And you've said it. Platforms are critical because there's a lot that are actually on platforms, e-commerce platforms, for example. So maybe Manish will have the last say. How does UnoBank help in gaining that access to digital banking, not just using updated technology or devices?
So a lot has been talked about the devices and technology. So technology is important for three aspects, which is first the access itself, second is the validation, and third is the continuous monitoring. That is a given. But I think where we are going to really make a difference is a theme which we didn't speak much about today, was around collaboration and ecosystem. And I think it's linked to what RV mentioned about platforms, because platforms, you can look at it internally, but then when the platforms are kind of connected to each other, it's all open finance and kind of access to the ecosystem. So once we have the right technology, which is allowed people to access, we have the proper validation, we have a continuous monitoring, and then we are connected to the ecosystem, you can see the exponential power, which is a power which allows us to kind of expand, not only us, it's beneficial to kind of raising the bar for the entire ecosystem, for the entire economy. And that's the focus going to be in UNO. Thank you.
Thanks, Manish. Jojo, Leila, any last phrases that you'd like to leave to the audience?
I go first, Leila. Well, I think this is a very, very refreshing and even for me, hearing all of these perspectives, and I hope this has also been a breakthrough of an appreciation of what digital banking or what open finance can do. But I'll support and add to what Manish and RB said about technology. While this is very powerful, but while technology can bring us to different places in terms of where we want to go, I think the fundamental aspect is that how ready are our consumers to really use this technology, right? So in Cambodia, when I started really implementing this new fintech technology, I realized that 53% of the market were really afraid to use the phones because for financial uses, because they don't trust themselves, putting in money, transferring $200 and they put in 20 or they put in $2,000, so we have to have also a basis by which, I used the word laymanize earlier, but by which we can laymanize application of technology and understand the fact that we can only do so much relative to educating or telling or basically increasing the level of financial literacy of people. So there can be an approach wherein it can be hybrid. There can be an approach by which we can be more patient about people not adopting immediately. But in Cambodia, what we did was that we came up with thousands and thousands of agents, and they were the core by which all of these transactions are happening. And most of the people just go there and basically allow them to do the transactions themselves. So I think there has to be a way by which we can also focus our attention on our ability to introduce something that's not yet, going to be at a level that can be understood by our consumers. So I think there has to be a balance there. And to Manish's point, I think there needs to be a collaboration by which this can be done, so that we don't compete with each other. We don't overperform the other, but focusing on what's the best for our consumers.
Thank you, Jojo. Leila, you have the last say.
I do agree perfectly with what Jojo and Manish said earlier. A lot I have appreciated the panelists and all their discourse about open banking. And what is stick to my mind is that there is really a need to understand our consumer concerns. And then we digital banking digital banks, licensed digital banks, has to think collaboratively how we can probably push forward open banking, and with consciousness on the risk that we have to manage for our consumers. And definitely, we will gonna be playing a large part in terms of furthering the Philippines open finance, open banking ecosystem to further heights. Thank you for this afternoon session, so very productive. Thank you everyone for having us today.
Thank you, I love this. Let's collaborate. But all sounds very exciting. We still have one more message from Amor Maclang, convener of Digital Pilipinas. Amor?
Thank you, Jove. This message, I'll make it quick. This isn't so much a recap, but rather a commitment to work together, as what we've been doing for all the panels in World FinTech Festival. You know that the talks and the thought leadership is only a very small component of what we're doing in DP. I thank many of you who are co-conveners here. A lot of it has to do with a commitment to work together in a whole of society and a whole of government approach. Now, a few things. Number one, both Jojo and RV talked about the importance of, and even Leila talked about the importance of connecting all of our APIs. And this is not just for the payment space, but rather how do we, for example, power other verticals. No? So earlier, we talked about the importance of an API-led economy, say, in the InsurTech or in the MSME sector. So through this platform, we hope to be able to work with you guys in open financing who already drank the Kool-Aid to actually help tech up and power the other verticals in that manner. I believe it was Jojo and Manish who talked about, and RV who talked about the importance of trust. We just got off a meeting with the NPC, specifically Commissioner Liboro, who has actually talked about creating sandboxes that cut across various verticals, right? So it's not just about one specific vertical, but one that cuts across all. So this is our hope, which is to start a test and learn and a sandbox mentality, which has been pioneered in the payment sector and actually now permeating across various national line agencies. Last but not the least is we need to collectively work together in order to see this through, the promise of open finance and also open banking. So this week in the World FinTech Festival, Singapore FinTech Festival, the Open Banking Exchange Asia is going to be launching. So we're going to play a part in that. And of course, without preempting anything, first quarter of next year, the Philippines will once again play a very important role there. So we hope to count on all of your support, especially those of you who are children of fintech who are now driving open banking. I got my eyes on you, Jojo. I got my eyes on you, RV. And let's continue to tech up the Philippines by showing them the money through open finance and open banking. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay po ang Digital Pilipinas. Salamat. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you, Amor. And that's all the time we have, folks. It was a great panel, and I'm sure everybody's rushing to the next one. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
God
Bye.
bless you, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
you.